All right, welcome back to Soul Invictus. So this is pretty much a video series of where I've come to in my life and what I've learned reading the Bible multiple times, reading the New Testament many times, reading the Old Testament. I'm going through it. It's my third time to the Old Testament. The Old Testament is a very long. It's over 1,000 pages long, very small text. And it's not just to try to learn it, it's just to try to learn also if it's more of an allegory or if it's more literal. But when I come to certain parts in the Old Testament, I always had to question this. And so this video is going to be about why I've become Gnostic. Why I've become Gnostic, more Gnostic than would be I'm not even sure what to describe myself as, Cathar or just Gnostic. I don't know. I don't really practice any of that. Used to be a very strong Catholic, and so if you want to come and tell me why, I need to do what I need to do. I don't mind. I don't mind a conversation. I've had plenty of conversations when I was younger. I was in a monastery school. I talked to monks. I talked to theologians. I asked them questions that they couldn't answer. And not to sound cocky, it's just that they couldn't answer them. They always had some way to fluff it over into some interesting way of understanding it, all of which just still never makes any sense. So sometimes they would come up with some interesting ways of describing something that, could put some interesting points together. But for the most part, there are a lot of things in the Old Testament that just do not correlate with the New Testament. And there's a lot of things in the New Testament which, now that I've been reading more of the Egyptian Book of the Dead, it's almost a carbon copy from what Jesus Christ is saying from what that was. So what's going on with that? So this is why I've pretty much gone Gnostic, because a lot of things in the past are just not adding up. And I'm going to read to you a little bit. This is one of the parts. This is literally the part that just made me stop reading for a month or two. And I'm just like, I'm just done. I'm just done. This is terrible. And either this God or the idea of it being a druid casting a spell and having it happen. Now, this is another understanding that some people understand and believe in. I'm not saying everybody does, but this is another understanding. Either way, one way or another, this is where it's like, I've hit the brakes here. I'm just hitting the brakes here. This is ridiculous. And this is not a good thing. This is not a good thing. So I could read to you the beginning here, but if you want to read to the beginning here, go right ahead. It's Chronicles 1:21. This is the Old Testament here. This is with King David. I could start up and read the whole thing, I guess. Maybe I will. Might make a little more context as far as some things. So I'm going to read from the book that I have, which is the New American. It's St. Joseph's edition. I'm going to read the version that I have. I have this here, though. It's a Bible studies tool. You can read along if you want. Go find the Bible that I'm reading from, or whatever you want to do. Read along here. I'll try to scroll it down here. But basically, 21, David senses the plague. A Satan rose up in Israel, and he enticed David into taking a census of Israel. David therefore said to Joab and to the other generals of the army, "Go find out the number of the Israelites from Beersheba to Dan and report back to me that I may know their number." But Joab replied, "May the Lord increase his people 100-fold, my lord king. Are not all of them my lord's subjects? Why does my lord seek to do this thing? Why will he bring guilt upon Israel?" However, the king's commands prevailed over Joab, who departed and traversed all of Israel and then returned to Jerusalem. Joab reported the result of the census to David of men capable of wielding a sword. There were in all Israel 1,100,000, and in Judah 470,000. So I think we're here somewhere. So basically, I think I'm on the right thing here. Yeah, it should be. Okay, so yeah, we're right there. Levi and Benjamin, however, he did not include in the census, for the king's commands was repugnant to Joab. This command displeased God, who began to punish Israel. Then David said to God, I have sinned greatly in doing this thing. Take away your servant's guilt, for I have acted very foolishly. So right here. So I'm going to move it down to right here. Then the Lord said to Gad, David's seer. So they were using seers, kind of like Nostradamus, was a seer. So then the Lord spoke to Gad, David's seer, in these words. Go tell David, thus says the Lord, I offer you 3 alternatives. Choose one of them, and I will inflict it upon you. Accordingly, Gad went to David and said to him, thus says the Lord, decide now. Will it be 3 years of famine, or 3 months of fleeing your enemies with the sword of your foes ever at your back, or 3 days of the Lord's own sword, a pestilence in the land with the Lord's destroying angel in every part of Israel? Therefore, choose. What answer am I to give him who sent me? So right here, was it not I who gave command to count these people? This is just a census, and yeah, it's a census to know how many people are able for war, but it's still a census. It's just a count. It's a head count, literally. Okay, so I think I lost my place there. For choose what I am, okay. Therefore choose. What answer am I to give him who sent me? Then David said to Gad, I am in dire straits, but I prefer to fall into the hand of the Lord, whose mercy is very great, than into the hands of men. Therefore the Lord sent pestilence upon Israel, and 70,000 men of Israel died. 70,000 men died. God also sent an angel to destroy Jerusalem, but as he was on the point of destroying it, the Lord saw and decided against the calamity and said to the destroying angel, enough now, stay your hand. So basically, yeah, right here. I'm just... So the angel of the Lord who was standing by the threshing floor of Ornan the Jebusite, when David raised his eyes, he saw the angel of the Lord standing between earth and heaven with a naked sword in his hand, stretched out against Jerusalem. David, the elders, clothed in sackcloth, prostrated themselves face to the ground, and David prayed to God, was it not I who ordered the census of the people? I am the one who sinned. I did this wicked thing, but these sheep, what have they done? O Lord, my God, strike me and my father's family, but do not afflict your people with this plague. Then the angel of the Lord commanded Gad to tell David to go up and erect an altar to the Lord on the threshing floor of Ornan the Jebusite, or Jebusite. David went up to Gad's command, given in the name of the Lord. While Ornan was threshing wheat, he turned around and saw the king and his 4 sons who were with him without recognizing him. But as David came upon him, he looked up and saw that it was David. Then he left the threshing floor and bowed down before David, his face to the ground. David said to Ornan, sell me the ground of this threshing floor, that I may build an altar to the Lord. Sell it to me at full price, that the plague may be stayed from the people. But Ornan said to David, take it as your own, and let my lord the king do what seems best to him. So, anyways, they go on to build Holocaust and altar here. But here's the point. And I'm going to go back and show you another point here too. It's not just this. There's plenty of other little tidbits and articles and things like that. So, number 16. Okay, let's go back to Numbers. These are some important things. This is a part of my understanding and why I'm just like, I don't know. All right, so we go to number 16, And if you read through most of it, basically start at, well, I mean, just basically start at number 1 right off the bat. But I'm going to go up to, you can start there. And I'm going to go to number 25 here. So you can read through this. If you want to pause the video, you can and read through that. I'm going to go to 25 because this is a kind of a long thing. I just want to get to I want to be able to make my point quickly so I'm not losing you here. So go to 25, punishment of Dathan and Abiram. Moses, followed by the elders, Israel rose and went to Dathan and Abiram. He warned the community, keep away from the tents of these wicked men and do not touch anything that is theirs. Otherwise, you too will be swept away because of all their sins. When Dathan and Abiram had come out and were standing at the entrance of their tents with their wives and sons and little ones, Moses said, "This is how you shall know that it was the Lord who sent me to do all that I have done, and that it was not I who planned it. If these men die an ordinary death, merely suffering the fate common to all mankind, then it was not the Lord who sent me. But if the Lord does something entirely new, and the ground opens its mouth and swallows them alive down into the netherworld, with all belonging to them, then you will know that these men have defiled the Lord." No sooner had he finished saying all this than the ground beneath them split open, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed them. And their families, and all of Korah's men, and all their possessions. They went down alive into the netherworld with all belonging to them, and the earth closed over them, and they perished from the community. But all the Israelites near them fled, all their shrieks, saying, "The earth might swallow us too." So they withdrew from the space around the dwelling of Korah, and fire from the Lord came forth, from which consumed 250 men who were offering the incense. So they got consumed by flames, families, children, women, children, people just a part of the group just got swallowed up whole into hell. Wow, what a great God. What an awesome God. Awesome, meaning full of awe, really. But, I mean, this is literally just damnation. This is just hell. This is hellish. If you can bring something down into hell just because this Korah band was like, well, who put you in charge? I mean, the Lord's with all of us. That's what Korah was saying initially in the beginning. It was saying, the Lord's with all of us, and you know, we don't have to let you, and there was another band of people that were like, well, you led us all the way through this desert, and we could have had a home, but we're just wandering in the desert for so long. Another idea is that, devils in the desert and all that stuff. It seems very likely, not just with Moses, but with David too, that this is some kind of evil God. Literally, this is not a good God. I mean, you might be like, oh, but he's powerful. The thing is, the whole might is right idea, it doesn't necessarily mean it's good. Just because something's powerful and mighty doesn't make it good. There's a lot of really powerful bad guys in movies out there, and they're not touted as good just because they're powerful. This is a power play and a point. Thousands of people died with what David went through. 70,000 people died because of what David did that upset the Lord. And so those people had to die to prove a point to David. They did nothing. So the little people meant nothing to the Lord. It's just that they were just cattle, just sheep. Literally like what David says, they're sheep. They're sheeple. They don't really matter. Only David, the important person, the one at the top, mattered. And another thing that I wanted to say too was, as you go on and you read Chronicles, chapter 22, I get into a very interesting thing here, which might, I don't know, might make some things contestable, might make you go, spin your head around and vomit. I don't know. I don't know I don't know how you're going to feel about this, but if you start up here, it says, David then ordered all the aliens who lived in the land of Israel be brought together. He appointed them stone cutters to hew out stone blocks for buildings in the house of the God. He also laid up large stones. So it made me just think, alien masons? Is that what this is about? And then we read a little bit further down. If I can actually scroll this right here, I will. Nope, it's not letting me scroll it. Anyways, Chronicles 22. If you can read it, awesome. Although I can't scroll right now. But, so brought together much bronze that it could be weighted, and cedar trees without number, the Sidonians and Tyrians, or Tyr. There was the god Tyr in the Norse mythology. I don't know if this has any kind of connections there, but brought great stories of cedar logs to David, who said, My son Solomon is young and immature, but the house that is to be built for the Lord must be made so magnificent that it will be renowned and glorious to all countries. Therefore, I will make preparations for it. Thus, before his death, David laid up materials in abundance. Let's see if I can... Nope, still can't scroll that. Sorry. Okay, so charge to Solomon. Then he called for his son Solomon and commanded him to build a house for the Lord and the God of Israel. David said to Solomon, My son, it was my purpose to build a house myself for the honor of the Lord my God, but this word of the Lord came to me. You have shed much blood, and you have waged great wars. You may not build a house in my honor. Irony. Because too much blood has been shed upon the earth in my sight. However, a son is to be born to you. He will be a peaceful man. He will give him rest from all his enemies on every side. For Solomon shall be his name, and in his time I will bestow peace and tranquility upon Israel. It is he who shall build a house in my honor. He shall be a son to me, and I will be a father to him, and will establish the throne over his kingdom, over Israel forever. It just made me think of Masonry. A lot of Freemasonry is based upon the idea that their initiative, their origins come from King Solomon. Just make me think that they're above the Israelites. They're above Israel. Just that's what kind of makes me think that. They're above Israel. The Freemasons and their sect is above Israel because it states here that this Lord will be above all that. So that made me think that. But regardless of that, just looking back on this and just saying I'm going Gnostic, I'm trying to understand more, because when I read through the Old Testament, it just seems to be so disconnected from the New Testament. The Old Testament God and what he did and how he did it is such a different thing than what Jesus had to say and talk about. And even with what he had to say and talk about, even though there's a lot of things and connections to the Egyptian understanding of what you should and shouldn't do, the Ten Commandments are literally like also a part of like the Egyptian stuff too. So many things. I was reading parts of the Book of the Dead, and I'm like, wow, this is like the New Testament right here. Why is this like the New Testament? And I'm starting to realize that this book, most of the Bible book, and the reason why the Nag Hammadi was being burned, kind of like how Hitler was burning a lot of the books back then, Nag Hammadis are being destroyed, being burned, and all that stuff long ago. So this was before Hitler was burning books. But the Nag Hammadi was going through that same treatment too. Why? Suppression of information. Why is it different than this? It's very likely that the Romans, they wanted everybody to play nice because Christians were a completely different thing outside of Judaism in that sense. Like it was part of the Nag Hammadi was literally saying that this Old Testament God is an archon and is a bad entity. It's a false light. Uh, from my understanding, there's certain understanding that they do believe Lucifer is like the one in charge, the morning light. So, from what I can tell, and from what I've been able to read, this is just, there's more to this. There's so much more. There's so many pages that you're like, why would God do that? Why would God destroy thousands and thousands of people? Why would he have them totally annihilate other tribes of people? Oh, they're wicked. Okay, well, man, woman, and child? I mean, you couldn't try to find a way to help them understand what they were doing? You just had to totally wipe them out, right? That's what you had to do. So as soon as somebody pisses you off a little bit, you got to kill them off completely. You know, that just man, woman, child. I mean, just pulled men, women, and children straight into hell. Because now some other people might be like, well, you know, it's the power of intention. You know, the God within you, the power that you have inside of you. That's what Moses tapped into, and he was able to use that to make that happen right then and there. And people might say that. People might say that from possibly a magical sense. But if that's also the case, then how do you define which one is God, the good one, and which one's God, the bad one in the Old Testament? How do you define that? You just go, oh, it's easy, just whichever one did good. But that confuses everybody. Everybody that reads this is super confused. There's thousands of pages to read through. There's thousands of pages to read through. This is not possible for everybody to be able to understand and interpret this unless they read through every single thing imaginable and multiple times to get an understanding. Most people be like, well, I go to church and I believe, and yeah, you read one book or you read parts of it and you had somebody else tell you everything about it. And then you just believed it. Then you live your life with that much knowledge. And that's as far as you want to go, because that's where you are in life. And that's how you want to do it. You want to be that. If you want to be somebody that knows more about this stuff, actually read the words. Find out what it was about. Stop living your head in a cloud going, oh, I can't understand it. I don't care. Whatever they told me is right. People lie all the time. And they try to deceive you in so many ways. You know, it says in here, you know, be careful. The devil's like a prowling lion. What's the Old Testament God described as? Kind of like a lion. So I'm just saying, like every time I read through it, it's so hard. It's not because it's long. It's hard because it's like, is this really God? In the Old Testament, I just look at it and I read the New Testament, and you know, even if some stuff was mixed in with Egyptian stuff from the Book of the Dead, Egyptian understanding. I mean, you read the Book of the Dead, you'll see a giant connection. You'll see a big connection. It's insane. Even if it was, I think Jesus's initial, message, with the woman for trying to find the living water, the point of that was that the water was inside of her, but to activate it, she needed to balance herself. She was with too many different men. She was literally just, oh, I like this guy because, he's strong. I like this guy because he's got all this money. And I like this guy because he's a poet. And she's with all these different men. She's like, be with the one you're meant to be with. Don't be with all these other people, because you're robbing, that woman was robbing each of those men of their understanding that they had somebody that really wanted to be with them. She only wanted to be parts of these other guys because this guy had a part of this, a part of that. As the same thing goes in reverse for guys too. So a guy wanted to be with all bunch. So really what it came down to was that she wasn't balanced. She was overbalanced or underbalanced. She was out of whack. her life was out of whack. That's where she would get the living water when she balanced herself. She came back saying, "This man is a prophet. Everybody should come and listen to him." That's what the Samaritan woman was saying when Jesus said to that. I believe that. I believe what Jesus said, love God with your whole heart, mind, and soul, and love your neighbor as yourself, was literally a mixture of the two. The source of the Creator is inside you. It's inside your heart. It's inside you. If you love God with your whole heart, mind, and soul, you also love yourself. And to love yourself means that you can love others and treat them the way that you want to be treated. You become a star. You become a sun. The Egyptian older understanding of when you passed, this life, if you did everything right, you'd ultimately become a star. You become a sun, become a solar entity. There's so much energy to you, because you're a positive. There's electrons, there's negative, positive, negative, positive. You flip back and forth throughout your life what you're going to be. What you're giving off, you can tell right now what it's going to be. Is it positive? Are you trying to be positive and promote a positive message? Or are you trying to promote a negative message? But, obviously you have to have some, determination to put together facts and, try to see things reasonably and all that. But from my understanding with the passage is just, if I was that God in the Old Testament, I would say to David, I'm sorry, that just wasn't the right idea, You can choose your punishment, but it's not going to be death, but it's obviously not going to be something that you're going to like. If I knew how to help script this person's life. But the reason that Jesus would say these things, and Jesus would always basically say things like, he would tell you how to live without telling you how to live. And this is a total, complete difference, an opposite factor of the Old Testament. The Old Testament and New Testament have two completely different types of messages when it comes to this. One is you live your life being good, kind to others, doing what you can for others. The other one is pray to God and He'll do it for you by sending somebody else to do your work for you. So there's two different kinds of things. And you might be like, no, it's not true. If you just sit there praying to God, hoping somebody else is going to take the burden, you might end up, doing that. But the fact is, one, you're gaining the spiritual treasures that Jesus is talking about in the New Testament for yourself, gathering the oil that you'll need for later so that you're not left out in the darkness. So basically your soul, once you go, you're going to need that kind of fruit, that kind of energy, that kind of positivity to break the barrier. If you've been negative and you're drawing things to you all the time, you can't give off that kind of light, then, well, you're going to be stuck, not going anywhere. If you have energy to give off, just think of it like a rocket fuel, you can push away from the ground and lift off into space and go somewhere. If you have no energy because you've just decided everybody's draining me and I'm just going to let them do it, I'm going to play the victim, be that victim my whole life, and I can't succeed, I can't do this, I can't do that, you're never going to make anything of yourself. You're always going to look for someone else to save you. You're going to look for God to save you. You're going to look for this person to save you, that person to save you, this thing needs to save you, and you did nothing. You are nothing. If you do something with your life, now I'm not saying you have to be, as smart as Elon Musk or, Albert Einstein or Tesla or anybody that, or be super successful, because all that stuff, you can't bury yourself with all those riches. You can't, you're not going to be buried. It's not like when you get put in a coffin, they're going to turn your house upside down and push it down into the ground to push you in further with all those riches. All those people long ago thought that was what they would gain to help them in the afterlife, to be like, hey, look at all my coins. And the dead would be like, "Arr!" No, no, the dead don't give a crap about your coins or your money. They don't care. Because when you're in another reality, you're bringing the memories and the person and the essence of who you are into that reality. You can't take a lick of those coins with you. All these people that tell you this, they're full of shit. They're full of shit. They don't know what's going on. They want to lead you away. They want to let you think that you need to take all this stuff with you. What happened with that? They got sent down into hell with all their possessions and all their stuff. Everything. But did it mean anything? No, it didn't mean a single thing. And why did it happen? Because this guy who commanded God, worked for God, respected God, this alien, this entity in the Old Testament, just had this hard on for just killing, just death and destruction, There was never, well, I mean, there probably were a few, I can't remember, but most of the time, you did something wrong, you died. Just like that. You're gone. It doesn't matter what you, you do one little thing wrong, you and your whole people, put down. Jesus didn't do anything like that. At most, people complain about the whip that he made to get people out of the temple that were selling in the temple, because the temple was made for people to bring food so that those that had not could have some. You have too much, take it to the temple. The temple was made for people to pile their things in there, for the people that have either a disability, they're blind, they're deaf, whatever disability they have, they can't, they're doing what the best they can, but they can't produce like other people can, and therefore they don't get the positions and jobs, or they don't get the position for working for a higher person. They're not able to, do things for themselves. That's for them. That's Social Security right there. The temples are made for that. That's what they're there for. They're there to have people, to help people in need, help people as also physicians, because the priests are also supposed to be physicians too, physical physicians, spiritual physicians, to help the people with everything. If you came there because you were hurting, you had a disability of some kind, that's what that was there for. And the people that had stuff, they were able to overproduce stuff that they didn't need anymore, that's where they took it to. This is all a sense of balancing. Balancing your life as yourself can balance a community. This is what it was all supposed to really truly be for. That's why David, when he goes into the temple and he takes bread, and then Jesus does too, and he's like, well, my people are hungry. He doesn't care. He doesn't care what they have to say, because Jesus knew this is what that temple was supposed to be there for. Jesus knew this. Now, some people go on forward wondering if Jesus was God or not. I personally think that he was, because I personally believe what he said. We are all sons and daughters of God. Now, whether the God meant that this alien from the past, I truly believe Jesus was talking about somebody else. Most of the time, Jesus mentions his Father more than God. They mention God to him, but he mentions his Father most of the time. Now, who is his father? I don't know if it was this Old Testament guy. I don't think it was. I think that's why the Gnostic texts were burned and banished, and only like lately now we can read this stuff. Whereas in the past, when I was reading this growing up, not knowing about the Nag Hammadi or researching it or anything like that, I always had a contention with the Old Testament God and Jesus. Always. I was like, these two just, why is this so weird? Why is this so different? This doesn't make any sense. I've read the New Testament 5 times. I've read the Old Testament 3. It just, to me, it doesn't make any sense. That's why I am Gnostic. And truly, it's a crazy matter, because literally I think that this whole Bible which, I mean, it's true. It's was put together by the Roman Catholic faith, which was the Roman Empire. And Rome would assimilate different cultures within themselves so that they could expand their empire. They're like, if we can't kill it, we'll join it or merge it with us. This is a part of military tactics that do happen. You can't kill them, join them. That's a saying, and there's a reason for that saying. So I think what ended up happening is the Roman Empire is like, just find a way to get this to be together. Just mix the different elements in there, because Romans took the Greek gods. If you don't remember, Romans took all the Greek gods, just renamed them, all of them. Jupiter was Zeus, and we could go down that rabbit hole too. But from my understanding, from what I've been looking at, I'm thinking that this Old Testament God, Yahweh, is Enlil, is, because it all goes back to, according to the Sumerian records, goes back to that. I think they're all aliens. If they're not aliens, then there's some spiritual being, but I think that this one was a pretender, or else whatever people were conjuring was not right, and some parts were good and some weren't. Because I go back to the part where sacrificing, he was going to sacrifice his child. Abraham was going to sacrifice his child, and that God was like, okay, you can't sacrifice him now. It was a test to see if he would sacrifice his son for him. Now, what family, if some entity came into your mind and said, you need to sacrifice your child for me to prove your loyalty to me? If this happened in modern day era, that person would be put in prison, and everybody would shame that person for being a psycho killer. And then people would be like, well, you told him at the last second to turn away. That God wanted to see if he could kill his child, how more reptilian he was than mammalian, how much more loyalty he'd give to the person that gave him the gift than the gift itself. Which to me is just, seems a little, I don't know if that's narcissistic or what that is, but that seems a little bit psychotic. And just to prove a loyalty point, like, oh, I knew he wouldn't do it. The reason I say this and all that is because how do we treat our family? How do we treat our children? It's nothing like you read in the Old Testament with God, with his people. Nothing. There's hardly anything that's even remotely similar to what we do, to what the Old Testament God did. We just don't, because we feel that is wrong. That's why we don't do it. And so that's why when I look at what Jesus had to say, the source of creation, I'm going to call it that more often, because I was so used to calling it God, but I feel the source of creation is a source of love, and I feel like there really is one. According to the Nag Hammadi, and what Jesus had to say is there is a source, there is a Father, it is of love, it's all love, but then there was something that went astray. And I feel like these things that went astray, even Peter talks about it. Peter's in the Nag Hammadi, and he talks about the powers, the authorities, the ones that want to control. And I think it's all these things here. All the things that want this kind of control. So this is what I wanted to say. This is probably a long one. I know, I'm kind of like getting to my point here. And I haven't really been on for a while because this has just been like... it's been a really hard thing for me to go through and to look for it, because I was a pretty strong Catholic for a long time, believing that the Old Testament and New Testament were all together because it had to be, it was all divine source and all that. And then I read all these other scripts which confirm my feeling of it for the longest time, that these two can't be. It just can't be. It just doesn't make sense. Like I never... And most people, when they want, it's the funniest thing. Most people want to talk to you about Jesus and the source of creation. They're like, oh, let's go back to the Old Testament. Let's read the Maya. Let's read Kings. What are you doing? If you want to talk about what Jesus had to say, why do you keep trying to reference past to the back? You just cherry pick through different. Yeah, and, the fact is, you could do that with almost anything. You could find almost anything. You could just read through any book and just like point out something that's going to relate to your life in most of the books you read. You just cherry pick into it, and you'll find something. You just will. You know, it's like trying to look at a Chinese fortune card and expecting that to like give you your whole life's destiny because, oh well, it says you know, I'm gonna be happy this week. Oh, that's amazing. I think it's gonna come true. This fortune cookie is great. I love this place. I'm gonna go back there again. It's so why? I'm just saying, like this just seems too different, and I've had my family try to like tell me, oh, God had to smite these people because they were wicked and all this stuff. I think what it really comes down to is two warring brothers, maybe three, maybe a family of warring families that have been controlling different segments of people in different countries throughout time to war against each other. And we are literally like the video games we play. We are the pawns in the video game that they want us to play and be a part of. And so I think what's going to end up happening is, and you know what? Here's another thing. I want to make another video about Babylon, the times of Babylon. I think they're right now. And I think we've been living through that, which I think I'll stop and I'll probably make a video for that. But anyways, that's what I had to say for this. And this is why I've basically gone Gnostic. I mean, people could come and contend this and contend that and go for it. I'm up for a nice conversation. If you're coming at me with wrath and hatred, I know what kind of spirit you are. I know what kind of entity you are. Unless you actually have something logical to talk about in a nice, kind of way. If you have something, if you're trying to come with love and you're trying to give me an understanding of something, that'd be great. But other than that, this is basically where I've come to. I've researched a lot of things, looked at a lot of things, read a lot of things, all over the place. I can't even name how many things I've looked at. Ancient Egyptian stuff, ancient Atlantean stuff, the Old Testament, some of the Judean stuff, the old Christian stuff, the Gnostic stuff. So many things, I can't even put a finger on all of it. And I've been researching so many things like every day. So I'm like nonstop trying to figure this out because I want to figure this out. I want to figure out where we're going, and how we can get there. And so far, what I've been able to find out is really just most of it comes down to love. If the source of creator is really love and we align with love, we will protrude that, we will reflect that, and the source creator will know us. So we'll know it as it knows us. And I think that's a profound thing to say, because if you live with a lot of I'm gonna hurt these people, and I'm all angry and you're acting like that all the time, you're gonna go to that spirit when you die, whatever that spirit is, and you're gonna be with that kind of spirit. You're gonna be there. If you're about love and kindness and forgiveness, you're gonna go to the source creator. You're gonna go there. That's what I really do truly feel is the truth. But if I'm just saying, I feel like you go where you want to go, how you act, how you are. And there's been some things that I've had to change in my life. Not too recently, but recently, I've had to cut out some negative things to be able to go a little further. I have to stop focusing on like just pure negativity being like pushed towards me. Like I need to focus on doing this and doing that because this is negative and that's negative and this is negative. That's like I'm pushing the drama out of my life with that. I want to have some fun. I want to talk and be kind and all that. And I want to like open things up, but I need to push that out because I want to gain another level. And it literally is kind of like that with ascending to higher planes of level. Sometimes you're at this level and other people are here and you're wondering, why are they here there and I'm here? It's because you keep complaining about it. You can't rise. Why does air rise? It's lighter. It's letting go of the heavy materials. That's why it rises. That's why balloons float in the air. I'm just saying, it's you let go of the heavy material that's built up inside you that's holding you down. Sometimes it's hard because sometimes your situation changes. Your friends, your family, things might change, and but you're gonna feel better inside, and you're gonna start resonating with people like you. So that's basically what I wanted to say with the whole Gnostic thing. Got anything you want to talk about? It'd be great, but if you come at me with negativity, I'm just gonna avoid it. I'm just gonna avoid. I don't need that. I can contend with it. I can debate people. I can talk to them about what I know versus they know. As far as all that goes, I've been around a lot of negativity. I can do that, but I don't want to. I don't want to anymore. I want to put that down, put that to the side, and just go forward. So that's all I got to say. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you do, leave a like. Leave some comments too. If you want to talk about some stuff or you have an understanding of where you've gone. I know a lot of people go a lot of different ways. Not everybody always stays the same religion. They kind of move to this thing or that thing. And I think a lot of things, like if I talk about St. Francis going over to, I think he was in, I don't know if he was in Iraq or what country it was, but he befriended somebody from a completely different religion, and St. Francis, they both resonated with each other, and they were totally different religious people at the time. So I'm just saying, like, I've talked to a lot of people with different backgrounds and aspects, and so, but yeah. So I guess all I gotta say is, be good to each other, and take care.